Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting the show this evening. On to hazardous weather graphic here. We've got high wind warning out for the eastern Alaska range for tonight through tomorrow, and that's for winds gusting up to, or winds actually will be increasing this evening. And overnight tonight, increasing with gusts up to 70 miles an hour. They'll continue through the day tomorrow through the passes there. And then high wind advisories for the western Alaska range. They're looking for gusts 65 miles per hour. So just shade under the warning threshold here back to the west into the Kuskokwim Valley. Of course, that's over to the Alaska range, not in the Kuskokwim Valley. But just to the west of the valley there, we've got winter weather advisories out for tonight and into tomorrow for several inches of snow, 4 to 6, mostly east in the Nulato Hills, much lighter. But that combined with some breezy conditions will result in visibilities down to a half mile or less at times. And that same sort of situation going on up here along the northeastern Brooks Range. This winter weather advisory out looking for gusts to 40 miles an hour, or actually 30 to 35 miles an hour, reducing visibilities there with snow and blowing snow. And then the Arctic coast, winter weather advisory there ends at 8 p.m. this evening. Winds will lighten up and conditions will improve. And already looked like most of the visibilities were running anywhere from 1 to 3 miles up there, with winds gusting to about 30 miles an hour and temperatures ranging from anywhere from 5 to 10 above zero. Winter weather advisory also out for tonight and tomorrow here for the St. Lawrence Island area and on up to the Seward Peninsula or the Bering Strait coast. And that's actually out until noon Sunday for 4 to 6 inches of snow that may fall there, and winds gusting 35 to maybe 40 miles an hour. Should come down a little bit from what you saw today, but it'll continue again at least through tonight. Moving on to satellite imagery, you can see another front rolling northward here in low pressure center and right into the coast. This pushing in across the panhandle today, bringing areas of significant rainfall across areas of the panhandle, especially down south, North Gulf Coast, up into western Prince William Sound and into the Portage Glacier area, where they picked up about 4.5 inches during the day today. So they're back to their, like last fall, it seemed like they were picking up 3 to 4 inches a day for, seemed like weeks on end. Same pattern here, doing that again. Not so heavy rainfall amounts elsewhere, about 0.4 of an inch falling in Kodiak. And some pretty gusty winds as this rolls up. Turnagain Arm seeing winds gusting 55 miles per hour today. And Montague Island seeing gusts also to around 50 miles an hour. Palmer, northeast 35. So kind of breezy, but nothing too serious. You can see as the front lifts northward here, it clearing out over the Copper River Basin, downsloping winds off the Coast Range, gusting up to about 30 miles an hour in Gulkana, while Delta Junction up to 50 miles an hour already. And again, those are expected to increase with through the past gusts of about 70 tonight. Otherwise on the chart here, we've got one center that's developed up over the lower Yukon River Valley location there, and another one sliding up toward Kodiak Island, again bringing rain. The tightest gradient here occurring along the eastern North Gulf Coast, and again about Turnagain Arm on east and up into the eastern interior there with the gale force winds. And this system as a weekend brought about an inch of rain to, let's see, Heidelberg and Ketchikan. Both received an inch of rain during the day today. Otherwise, back here to the west, light snowfall amounts, kind of a widespread area of light snow occurring across the Yukon Delta, Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound on up into the northwest. Tapering off here, but some snow and gusty winds I mentioned with a winter weather advisory for St. Lawrence Island. And this trough brought some scattered snow showers to the Pribilof Islands, really isolated down through here. Actually some sunshine breaking out, Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians there with the breaks in the overcast, and snow showers scattered around the Aleutians, but winds out there quite light. For tonight, we'll see low centers actually combine and track up to the northwest there with the cold front right through here back to the west. That's where the precipitation will fall in the form of snow right down to sea level. And again, areas of blowing snow here in those advisory locations from the Kobuk Valley southward to just east of Norton Sound out to St. Lawrence Island. And again, conditions improving along the eastern Arctic coast tonight, but winter weather advisory stay out for the eastern North Slope, northeastern Brooks Range. And then another low pressure area making an appearance here onto the chart coming northward. And really just continued southerly flow is going to keep the rain moderate to heavy at times along the North Gulf Coast. Winds will probably drop back tonight from what they were and then pick up again as that rolls northward late tonight and tomorrow. It'll become more showery here across the southeast coast, but skies will remain cloudy, but definitely precipitation amounts will be lighter. And out to the west, not a lot of change, scattered snow showers to the Pribilofs. Wind's not too bad, northwest maybe 15 to 20, 25 at the most down across the eastern Aleutians. And even lighter back out to the west here, really light winds. And another trough here approaching the Nunivak Island area, maybe with some snow showers. We'll see for tomorrow that gradually shifts eastward here. Chance of snow showers, Nunivak Island, Yukon Delta. Main area snow shifting up to the north with that center, and still that frontal boundary or the Arctic front stalled right along or just east of near the Alaska range, quite weak in the southern area here. And dry behind us, skies starting to clear out over Bristol Bay, Dillingham. Snow showers mostly over the Bering Sea, which means Pribilof Island will see the best chance of snow showers as compared to the eastern Aleutians or Alaska Peninsula. You see a better chance of maybe some afternoon sunshine there with some sun breaks even more prevalent for Adak and Atka. And then you're back into the snow showers towards Shemya. And here comes that next front kind of leading or breaking away from the low center. It's hanging back to the south there due to the strong southerly jet riding that moisture and pushing it right up to the North Gulf Coast. So back to the gale force winds increasing here along the southeast coast. Full gales there. Rain heavy at times, say probably from Sitka up to Yakutat, westward across the entire North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula. Again, that jet originating way down there in the south, coming due north from about 25 north. Otherwise, most of the moisture cuts off along the coast range, and what the coast range doesn't block, the Alaska range will. So north of the mountains there, looking at a really nice day in the mid and upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country, partly sunny, variable mid and high clouds. Temperatures rising into the mid, maybe upper 40s in the afternoon. Isolated snow showers possible in the Brooks Range. North Slope not looking too bad, maybe some clearing there as well. And then looking ahead to Monday, we'll see this low center really weakens as it pulls northward here, and the front much weaker, but still a narrower band, but still moderate to heavy precipitation occurring here from, say, Yakutat over to roughly Cordova. And the southeast coast, you're becoming under the domination of this building area high pressure over British Columbia, especially down south. Look for maybe mostly sunny afternoon, mild temperatures there. And also back here to the west, weak high pressure really clearing out here, and light winds and dry conditions, mostly due to a lack of storminess rather than a presence of this weak high pressure zone. And that'll extend from Kodiak Island, mostly sunny, Bristol Bay, right on up to the western Arctic coast. Chance of light snow to the east there, Barter Island, Kaktovik, Dead Horse. Isolated scattered snow showers with a very weak trough. These systems out here over the Bering are really weak, especially this one. Stronger one down here to the south, that'll be cutting northeastward slowly. Another wave down here, that's going to track right on northwestward and come up toward the North Gulf Coast again, or the western North Gulf Coast, probably on Tuesday. And for the lows tonight, mild, upper 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle, mid 30s for the North Gulf Coast, mid 20s, lower 30s, south central Alaska. Lower 20s again, much like you saw this morning in the central interior. Teens in the Brooks Range, a little below zero in areas of the Arctic coast, kind of either side of zero. And 9, St. Lawrence Island, 21 at the Pribilofs, and upper 20s for the Aleutians. Highs tomorrow afternoon, 45 to 50 for the mid-Tanana Valley there with the downsloping winds, and just a little cooler here. Susitna Valley, mid-40s, lower 40s Cook Inlet, upper 40s there in Prince William Sound, and also 45 to 50 here across the southeast coast. And out to the Monday morning low temperatures, almost thought wasn't going to advance there. Near zero here on the north side of the Seward Peninsula into Chukchi Sea. And again, 0, maybe 2 below to 2 above as we got shown here in the western Arctic coast, a little milder to the east. And 25 to near 30 over the eastern interior, central interior areas. Lower to mid 30s, south central Alaska, and upper 30s and lower 40s for the Panhandle out west. Lows in the upper 20s to lower 30s for the Aleutians. Chillier for St. Lawrence Island, colder yet for St. Lawrence Island. And mid 40s for the highs. A little cool down in the Tanana Valley on Monday afternoon from what you'll see tomorrow, but not much, still into the lower 40s. Lower to mid 40s, northern Cook Inlet, Susitna, Manuska Valley areas. Lower 40s, Kodiak. Cooler back up here to the northwest, teens. Through the Seward Peninsula, St. Lawrence Island, up to the Arctic coast, and in the 30s over the Aleutians. Southeast coast looking really nice, especially down south with possible sunshine, highs in the mid to maybe upper 50s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On to flying weather. Lots of IFR here, right up into western Cook Inlet, back across the Kuskokwim and lower Yukon Valley areas, into the northern Bering Sea, Seward Peninsula, right up into the northwest coast, Noatak Valley, much of the Arctic coast, south side of the Brooks Range, and IFR here socked in, coming up from the northeast Pacific, across the Gulf into the North Gulf Coast, over to the Panhandle. VFR here, Bristol Bay, back out toward the Pribilofs and the eastern Aleutians. And for tomorrow afternoon, pretty much stays that way out here in the west. Marginal VFR for the Bering Sea. Less IFR up here in the north now, mostly on the south side of the Seward Peninsula and along the Brooks Range on the southern slopes, and over toward western Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, back to the Alaska Range. Lots of IFR continues from actually into the Talkeetna, is up to the central Alaska Range, mostly North Gulf Coast, all the way across the Panhandle. And for Monday morning, IFR continues, but kind of shifts eastward here, but holds on to the Prince William Sound area and Kenai Peninsula into Turnagain Arm. IFR western Cook Inlet again, northward, kind of thinning out there into the interior, and then expanding over the Kobuk, Koyukuk valleys back into the northwest interior and on out to the eastern Arctic coast. VFR here breaking out Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, even the southern southeast coast. And here over the Alaska Peninsula, Bering Sea, just mostly marginal. And that improves here over the Bering in the afternoon. You can see becoming VFR from about Amchitka westward, but marginal Adak Yatka all the way over to Unalaska. VFR Kodiak, Bristol Bay, right up into the Kuskokwim Valley. And then narrow band of VFR here from the upper Yukon Valley on out to Kotzebue. North slope looking good. IFR here south of the Alaska Range into the Copper River Basin. North Gulf Coast continues IFR, improving over the Panhandle though. You can see VFR, but lingering IFR, northern Lynn Canal on over toward Glacier Bay. Anaktuvik, IFR trending toward marginal VFR tomorrow, starting out IFR as well for Adigan. So lowest conditions in the morning, improving into the afternoon, but probably won't become VFR. Lake Clark and Merrill, IFR the entire day. Rainy, marginal VFR at best, with IFR conditions on the eastern entrance. And for windy, IFR possible, southern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR to VFR out the north side. And for Isabel, marginal VFR becoming IFR. And Mentasta, generally VFR through the pass, south entrance vulnerable to lower conditions there. And Tanita, marginal becoming IFR in the afternoon. And Portage, IFR all day long. Chilkoot and White, same forecast, nothing but IFR. And for the freezing levels, a little farther to the north now, that persistent southerly flow, 6,000 feet now up across, I'll say Annette over to Craig, 2,000 feet almost to the northern Panhandle, 2,000 feet up in across the Kenai Peninsula. And actually just about all of the southeast and east interior here, we've got 2,000 foot freezing levels. Back down to the surface, the Alaska Peninsula, this for tomorrow morning, and just north of the Aleutians, south of the Pribilofs, and just south of Shemya. Icing, a little possibility of some light, isolated, moderate rime St. Lawrence Island through the Bering Strait. That should be mostly to the west or the north of the mainland or the coast even. Otherwise, a pretty good bed of considerable moderate rime icing here from the northern panhandle up along areas in the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound over to the western Alaska Range. And checking out the jet stream here, actually coming across the Pacific pretty strong, 190 knots, and then kind of coming over the Weak Ridge here, diving south at 160, almost down to about 20 north or so. Right back from north or south to north, 140 knots, 100 knots into the southeast interior, ridging through the western Canada area. Another trough here back over the northern Bering Sea. And at 9,000 feet, strong winds with this system. Next one coming up here, 45 to 55 knots, 60 knots in there across the Alaska Range, 50 to 60 knots across the Panhandle, 3,000 feet southeast, 50 here for the North Gulf Coast, and 25 to 30 into the interior, 55 knots along the coast of the Panhandle. And as far as turbulence goes, could be some moderate chop up here in the northwest, down across Kotzebue. Lots of moderate chop here for the North Gulf Coast, the Panhandle, and the Alaska Range, as well as the Alaska Peninsula.
What is it about the ocean that attracts so many of us? We like to play in it, get our food from it, build our houses near it, and gaze out at it. Our economy depends on the goods that come in and go out through our major ports. The ocean makes us feel good, contributes to our economic growth, and we like to be close to it. It's not surprising then that almost half of our population lives near the coastline. But working and playing along the coast is not always serene. Powerful coastal storms can raise the water level significantly, 20 feet or even more, causing loss of life, destroying homes, businesses, and property. Hurricanes like Katrina and Ike showed us firsthand the risks that coastal communities face.
It was 32 feet. We went through the first floor to the second floor, through the attic. The water came up to us like here on the roof. And we talking about swimming to the tree. And luckily, it subsided.
With ocean waters warming and sea levels rising, it is likely that the U.S. will encounter future storms equally as harmful and costly. And with so many people living along the coast, the stakes are getting higher each year. Storm destruction is rarely limited to lost lives and property. Instruments collecting water level and meteorological information must be located in harm's way so they can deliver data critical for flooding forecasts and emergency evacuations. But all too often, these stations are damaged or destroyed during the very times we need them. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, has responded to this dilemma by strengthening some of its storm tide stations. Known as NOAA Sentinels of the Coast, these platforms are single-pile, 4 feet in diameter structures that stand at least 20 feet above the sea surface and are driven 60 to 100 feet into the seafloor for stability. For over 200 years, NOAA has monitored the rise and fall of tides using the latest technology. Beginning with human observers in the early 19th century, NOAA has harnessed technology to operate its network of tide stations that automatically collect accurate and reliable data every 6 minutes. Today, NOAA maintains more than 200 permanent water level observing stations. NOAA's goal is to ensure that the public has advance notice based on the most accurate and up-to-date storm tide and meteorological information. This is only possible, however, when the tide stations operate throughout the storm. So Sentinels are designed to withstand a Category 4 hurricane, with winds up to 155 miles per hour and storm surges of nearly 20 feet above normal. Planning, design, construction, and operation required a team of experts in surveying, engineering, pile installation, oceanography, quality control, and web expertise. With new technology, NOAA is better meeting the needs of coastal communities. Lives are often at stake during the 24 hours before a major storm. Once floodwaters begin to rise, it becomes critical to know which evacuation routes are passable.
Having this kind of immediate real-time data up close that our community has access to is critical for us in our day-to-day operations.
Each sentinel will report real-time water level and meteorological observations. Water level measurements are precisely referenced to ensure that coastal communities can make informed decisions to elevate housing, build levees, and plan evacuation routes. In addition to storm tide reporting, the products that result from NOAA's instruments also contribute to safe navigation, accurate charting, marine engineering, sea level change monitoring, and other important activities.
Before we send crews out, we always check the tides, because being in South Louisiana, you have to make sure your barges and boats can get in before you can even begin your work. So the tide information is very important.
The first sentinels were constructed along the Gulf Coast at Calcasieu Pass, Amarada Pass, and Shell Beach in Louisiana, and Bay Waveland in Mississippi. Hurricanes Gustav and Ike tested the sentinels within weeks of installation. Standing strong, they delivered storm tide data, which were used by emergency responders as well as thousands of coastal residents. More sentinels are planned and will be built at exposed coastal locations as funding becomes available. Other stations in less exposed areas will be elevated above storm surge range on substantial structures. Coastal communities must be ever vigilant. Even tropical storms can deal a massive blow to many residents, especially storms that make landfall on a high tide. Sentinels are designed to serve the over 150 million residents of coastal communities, planning for the worst and hoping that we never need those plans. However, if the unthinkable happens, NOAA Sentinels will be there standing tall, providing a safe haven for instruments that are vital to planning for and responding to nature's fury.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis still showing a little more growth here with the light winds and the chillier temperatures in the area here where the sea surface temperatures are at or below freezing. And that'll continue probably for another day or so. Not so much advancement out here to farther to the west, and probably not much down here to the south either. Looks like midweek, the latter week, northeast winds may increase, which might start to push things farther to the southwest, maybe. And for the coastal water forecast, full gales here for the coast, southeast 40 knots, seas just under 20 feet, gales all the way up to the, actually the North Gulf Coast as well. Small craft advisory, central and southern inside waters with clearance straight, looking at gusts of 45 knots, otherwise Lynn Canal, south 15. Monday, south 25 gusts 40 for Lynn Canal, lighter winds down to the south, Stevens Passage coming down to 15 knots with seas subsiding to 3 feet. Southeast winds 30 to 35 knots on the south coast. Again, seas just under 20 feet. And the north coast, 40 to 45 knots southeasterlies with seas in the lower 20s. And for Cook Inlet, north to northeast tomorrow, 25 knots, small craft advisories. And same thing for Kamishak Bay, northeast 25. 30 knots out of the east for the Barren Islands. And the North Gulf Coast, minimum gales here on the west side, 45 knots southeast winds here on the east side, blowing right into Prince William Sound. Southeast 40, gusts 50 knots in the forecast for tomorrow. Seas up to 9 feet. Those fall back considerably on Monday, down to 15 knots, and southerlies at 20 for the North Gulf Coast, all the way over to the Barrens. West winds 15 for Kamishak Bay, and a light breeze out of the north-northeast for Cook Inlet, about 10 knots with 3-foot seas. And for the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow, northwest 20 to 30 knots, strongest on the Pacific side. Gales from Castle Cape up to Sitkinak out of the north, 35 knots. North 25 for Shelikof Strait, and east 25 for the areas east of Kodiak Island. And then for Monday, northwest 20 for Bristol Bay. Northerlies 15 to 20 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. And small craft advisories here from Castle Cape to Sitkinak. West winds 25 knots. And otherwise Kodiak at 20 knots. And for the Fox Islands, mostly Unalaska Island, still looking at a northwest wind at about 20, but becoming lighter and more variable here for Unmak Island, and then southeast on the light side, 15 to 20 knots here for the central Aleutians, and east-southeast 20 knots or less for the western zones. And those swing around to the west, west-northwest at 20 out here to the western, and from Amchitka Island, eastward to Adak, north 25, and northeast 35 south of Atka Island. And also south of Unmak Island, easterlies at 35 knots. So that'll be the gale zone there, that storm just to the south. Unalaska Island east 20 to 30. And for the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, northwest 15 knots, west 20 north of the island. Small craft advisories for St. Lawrence Island, and northwest 15 to 20 for the St. Matthew Pribilof Island zones. And then for Monday, east 15, St. Lawrence Island, northerlies 10 to 20 on the coast, east 15 for the Pribilof, south 20 St. Matthew Island, Beaufort Sea coast, east winds 20 knots all the way from Cape Thompson eastward to Demarcation Point tomorrow, and then northwest 25 knots, good for brisk wind advisories here from Cape Thompson down to the Bering Strait. And Monday, southeast 15 there for that zone from Wales up to Cape Thompson, and then southerlies at 25 knots turn southwest 25 on the western coast, and brisk wind advisories the entire stretch of the coastline here out of the west here from the central coast on over, except just notice that arrow's out of the east there. So east 25 there for the area just north of Kaktovik, Barter Island. And for tonight, this low pressure lifts northward, dries out here, and starts to clear out over the Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay, eventually the Yukon Delta. But winter weather advisories along this frontal boundary, which is slow moving, could lay down some significant snow in some areas. And also winter weather advisory, St. Lawrence Island, snow blowing snow, a few more inches up to the Bering Strait coast. Winter weather advisory ends on the Arctic coast, continues over the northeast Brooks Range and North Slope. Dry over the eastern interior. Rain continues moderate to heavy, or probably kind of a little let up this evening, and then it'll increase again as that next system rolls up tomorrow with the gale force winds, rain heavy at times, North Gulf Coast, but dry, nice day in the east central interior tomorrow with temperatures maybe approaching 50. And then for Monday, a weaker system keeps it wet in the North Gulf Coast, but sunshine over the southern panhandle and back to the west and up over the northeast as well.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.